Welcome to Real Science Questions,
the podcast where we get real questioning science.
Would you look better if your face was completely symmetric?
What's the deal with doppelgangers?
Why do you see in black and white when it's dark?
How does colour-blindness work? All that and more coming up on today's episode of Why the Face Part 1.
Okay, so did you actually have something prepared about symmetric faces and how allegedly we like symmetry in faces? It appeals to us. It makes people more beautiful.
No.
Okay. Well, I haven't read anything about that, but I have prepared something just now, which should scare you.
Why?
I'm going to send you a photo. Do you want you first, or do you want me?
Oh, is this measuring the symmetry of our faces? I figured it was something like that.
Oh no, there's no real science involved. Just a quick little bit of photo wizardry. All I've done is I've taken a photo of each of us, and there's 3 versions of it. So one is the original photo, one is the right side flipped over to cover the left side, and one is the left flipped to cover the right. So I'm sending you first me, because I don't think it's so bad on me, to be honest. I think actually one of them, okay, the central one looks f***ing weird.
Oh my god. Whoa. That's crazy. The middle one is, I don't know. Like, if I ran into any of these people, though, I'd be like, that's it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't know, the right-hand side, I'm like, maybe that's actually an improvement on me.
I don't know. You're perfect the way you are, Pip.
Thank you.
So I really want to see me now. Oh, I'm kind of scared too.
Yeah, I think yours is a lot funnier. I don't know what happened.
Maybe because it's somebody else. Is it because I'm gonna have 2 headphones? I'm technically gonna have 2 headphones.
No. Yeah, that's true, but that's not. Sorry.
Oh, that's funny.
I can't hit send yet. All right, here we go. Brace yourself.
I'm so nervous. Oh god, I'm downloading. Whoa! What? Okay. I look. That's my dad. Like on the right. That's my dad. That's Clive right there. In the middle, that's my mum.
Oh my god!
Crazy. What is going on?
You somehow got like...
I'm like one of them Labradors you see where it has like like half down the middle with a collie directly. I'm like that. Oh, that's mad. Oh, I don't know. I prefer the one on the left.
Yeah, I think the normal you is so much better than the other 2.
Weirdly enough, the middle one doesn't look that different though, does it?
A little bit. It looks, I don't know, you look more like a little bitch in that photo.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But the right hand side, it kills me.
What the hell has happened there?
Oh god.
I'm only joking though, that looks nothing like my dad, just in case my dad ever sees that.
You'll have to send me a photo of your dad to confirm that, but...
I'm scrolling through my phone right now trying to find a picture of my dad.
Anyway, should we crack on with some science?
Oh, you know what? It turns out that every human face is like a fingerprint. They're completely unique. You'll never get 2 faces that are the same. And like doppelgangers, the only reason why people think like, oh, this person looks absolutely identical to me is because their facial features are like placed in the same place. So their lips could look entirely different. Like one person could have fat lips, one person could have thin lips. But if they are in the same ratio and same placement, like 2 centimeters away from their nose, and then the nose is like, I don't know, however many millimeters from the eyes or whatever, then like if they're in the exact same placement and like even the eyebrows line up, then people will think that they're doppelgangers.
Okay, interesting. Because actually, Julia, so my girlfriend, once told me that she was in Italy at like an outdoor restaurant I think it was a wild boar festival or something. So they were eating wild boar in Tuscany. And she sat down at a table and like looked at the person sitting opposite. And she looked exactly the same. So basically like she saw herself looking back at her. And so I was like, oh wow. So like, what did you do? Were you like, hi? And she was like, no, it was so weird. Like they just stared at each other. And eventually the other girl left. She just got up and moved away because it was too weird. And that was the last she saw of her.
That's unreal.
Yeah. And I was like, are you sure it wasn't you from the future, like coming to warn yourself of something?
That's crazy. I used to think like that.
What, if you saw yourself?
Yeah.
What would you do?
Yeah, like, I was working in Tesco, and I was restocking the aisle at the time, and I was only young, I was in uni. There was this, like, older woman down at the end of the aisle, and I looked at her, and I thought that she looked so familiar to me. Like, it was like looking in a mirror, but older.
Oh, wow.
And, like, as soon as I saw her, she just walked away, and I don't know if that was, like, just some randomer.
Do you think for her, it was like she saw her younger self?
Yeah, I don't know, because I think she saw me looking, and I think like she intentionally walked away, and that's what really kind of creeped me out about the whole situation. It's like, fair enough if she like laughed it off,
Yeah.
but like, why walk away? Me being me, I'd say something. Like, I wanted to.
Damn. I mean, the only time I've like, sometimes you see someone and you're like, oh, is that me? I saw like a YouTube video thumbnail, and there was a girl playing the drums, and she had like the same kind of shape face and same hair that I used to have as a teenager, and I was like, is that me? It wasn't.
Spoiler.
End of story. Okay, so let's talk about parts of the face in a little bit more detail. Okay, so the eyes. How actually do they work? How do we actually see? Okay, so your eyeballs.
Whose eyeballs?
Everybody's well, most people's eyeballs. They're pretty much spherical. You have a lens around the outside, which focuses the light to the back of your eyeball, if you have perfect vision. If you don't have perfect vision, they might focus it a little bit in front or behind, but you can correct that with glasses or contact lenses. These will sort of first focus the light a bit, so that when it hits your lens, it'll go to the right spot at the back of your eyes, where all your cells are.
Sure.
Yeah, this image on your eyeballs is actually upside down. So once your brain has interpreted this image signal, so certain cells are activated, being like, oh, it's quite bright here, it's quite dark there, your brain corrects that for you so that you know where things are. Interestingly, if you were to wear a special kind of goggle that would invert image everywhere, so everything you see would be upside down, obviously at first you'd be like, walking into stuff, really clumsy. But after a few days, your brain actually learns this and it kind of corrects for it. So then it just becomes normal, like upside down becomes the new normal and everything's fine. When you then take the goggles off again, you have to learn again which way up is normal. So, and I think it takes about 3 days or something for your brain to work that out, which is kind of cool.
So how long do you wear the goggles for, sorry?
So I just had a quick look. It's actually about 10 days that it'll take you to adapt. But at that point, people that have tried this are able to ride bicycles and stuff. And one guy did this flipping left to right vision, and he was able to, or even allowed to, ride a motorcycle through the center of Innsbruck in Austria.
Yeah, I suppose it's like driving your car, but only in reverse when you've never done it before.
Yeah, it's like a sort of subconscious thing. Like, you don't have to try. Really, your brain just works it out for you. So then also on the outside of the eye, you've got the pupil, right, which is this hole where the light goes through. And then you've got your iris around that, which is kind of like a sphincter muscle.
Yeah.
It can vary in diameter, so it'll change the size of your pupil. So if it's really bright, then it'll make your pupil smaller. It'll close up and make that hole smaller. And if it's really dark, it'll open up really wide. Or if you take some drugs, it can open up really wide. I'm not sure why that happens, actually.
I think you probably just lose control.
Yeah, you just lose control of those muscles.
I mean, so much adrenaline's going through your system if you're taking stimulants anyway.
But then, so if that happens, everything will be really bright.
Yeah, things do appear brighter, but also like your eyes adjust very, very quickly to it.
Probably just because you've burnt all your retina.
Are drugs bad for your eyes?
I guess, like, I mean, if you then look at like something quite bright, but your eyes can't react anymore, then yeah, I'm sure you could do a bit of damage. I'm not sure if it would be permanent. Guess it depends what you looked at. I guess if you're gonna do cocaine, take a pair of sunglasses with you.
Pretty much.
Just in case.
Pretty much. Safety first, kids.
Yeah. Okay. So now once the light is the image of what you're seeing has reached the back of your eye, how do you actually get that image into your brain so that you know what you're looking at? Well, so you have two kinds of cells in your retina that are sensitive to light. They're called the rods and the cones. I think most people will have heard of those, but you might have forgotten what the differences are and what they actually do. And they're quite interesting, really, the differences. So they all have photopigments in them, which are just a part of the cell which is sensitive to light. And the photopigments contain specific opsins, which are a kind of protein. And each cell, the rods and the different cones, have a different protein in them, which dictates which wavelength of light they're sensitive to. So the rods, which actually do look like rods, they're kind of long and thin cells, are sensitive mainly in the green wavelength. But because the rods only work on their own, you can only ever see in black and white with rod cells. But the good thing about rod cells is that they're way more sensitive than the cones. So when it's really dark, you just see with your rods, because the cones haven't got enough light to kind of activate them, but the rods are there for you. They can still see.
Okay.
So if you wake up in the middle of the night and it's really dark, you might notice, if you look around, try and see, like, look at an object and see if you can actually see the color. You know, something that you know the color of, like, okay, that guitar is red or that exercise ball is green. I'm just looking at what's in my room.
Definitely, I'm going to be trying that tonight.
Also, my guitar's orange, not red. That guitar is orange.
You have a bad room.
So I tested this out with Julia. I made her hide under. So I made the room really dark, but it wasn't quite dark enough. So I made her go underneath the duvet, and then I handed her socks of different colors and asked her to identify for me what the different colors were. And she did okay with some of them, but some of them she got wrong. Damn it, where did I write down? Anyway, it was essentially like, sometimes she thought yellow was purple or pink. Sometimes she thought green was yellow or orange.
Wow, so that isn't a slight difference, is it? That's like other end of the...
Yeah, I mean, if you put a black and white filter on something that you've never seen before, like, how are you meant to know what color that is?
Yeah, watching black and white.
You could say if it's kind of light or dark, but that's about it.
Yeah, sure.
But obviously, most of us can see in color. So how does that work? So aside from the rods, we've got our cone cells. So we've got 3 types of cone cells in our eyes, the S, M, and L cone cells. So each cone cell has one wavelength of light that it's most sensitive to. So for the S one, it's in the sort of blue wavelength of 420 nanometers. But it's also sensitive a little bit to the green and a little bit to the violet. And then the M is most sensitive to green, but also a little bit to blue, and also to orange and red and so on. And then the L is also sensitive to red, yellow, and a little bit to green. So what happens is when you see light that's, for example, green, your M cells see a very strong signal. So they send a really strong signal to your brain. And then your L cells will also get a little bit of signal because they're still a little bit sensitive to that wavelength too. So they'll also send signal to your brain like, hey, we're getting some light too. And then, yeah, depending on the kind of green, maybe also the S will also pick up a tiny bit of signal. So they'll also send a little bit of signal to your brain. And then your brain works this all out together and it goes, okay, this much of that, this much of that. Okay, that is green. And then you see green.
Yeah, I get that.
Cool. And likewise, if you're looking at blue, your S cones, the ones that are most sensitive to blue, will get, hey, we're getting a lot of light signal. We're very sensitive to this. And then the ones sensitive to green will also get a little bit that you get. But the ones, the L, that are most sensitive to the red, yellows, they're not going to get anything there.
Mm-hmm.
So then again, your brain will be like, okay, this and that equals blue.
I get you. It's interesting because it works so much like a computer monitor or a television. And that's the part that's blowing my mind.
Exactly, yeah.
You've got the red, the green, the blue.
Yeah.
And that makes up a pixel, doesn't it? And then you've got them individual blocks, then the individual cells, the subpixels, and then they can turn on at a certain brightness, depending. And then it makes all these different colours, like cyan and magenta, and exactly like an eye. I was listening to that the whole way through and thinking, when can I say this? A little bit mind blown.
It's basically a great analogy. Like, it works two ways, and just nature did it first and better.
I love that. And then we copied. But the thing is, we came up with that idea. Do you think it's because of the study of the human eye? Or do you reckon it's just the most logical way to do things? And nature?
I'm not sure. I think since we had sort of prisms and we split light into its individual color components, so we understand, okay, white light is made of red, blue, and green. I think then it's kind of been like, okay, slightly obvious how to make white light from red, blue, and green.
Yeah, you're right, actually. Yeah. Like, because they are, fundamental colors, yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I say slightly obvious. It's still like a great discovery.
But the thing is, yeah, they would be the logical step.
And yeah, so the cool thing is, once you know how the eyes work, it becomes kind of easier to understand how colorblindness works. So there's a few different ways that you can be colorblind. One is that you're just missing one of the SML cone cells, so you just don't have them in your eye at all. So if you don't have the S one that's sensitive to blue, you're not so good at seeing blues anymore.
Sure.
Another one is that the sort of wavelength of each cone cell can vary a little bit. Like, so the sort of wavelength that it's most sensitive to can vary a little bit depending between people. And if it varies too much, let's say your ones that are sensitive to green and red, if they're sort of too close together, then it becomes really hard for you to distinguish between greens and reds.
Yeah.
Which I think is probably the most common color blindness. So essentially your brain's getting signal, like, let's say, the sort of, when it sees orange light and when it sees green light, it gets the same signal, like, oh, this much of that cell and this much of that cell. Well, I'm not sure anymore if that's green or orange. So that's why some people see grass as orange. The brain can't work it out anymore because it's not a distinct enough signal.
But apparently there's glasses you can get which correct that, but some people say they don't work, and there's split opinions on them. So I don't know how that would work.
I think it must just depend. Like, so I think they work by blocking out certain wavelengths of light to try and make it easier for your brain. But I guess...
Oh, and correcting it that way.
Yeah, but I guess they have to really be, I don't know, kind of specific to your colorblindness. Because if they're not blocking out the right wavelengths for you, then yeah, I guess they won't work.
Ah, okay.
And it's a really nice system. Like, the cones, they're like the most complex sensory system that we have in our bodies. And also, did you know that actually 1 in 12 men are colorblind and 1 in 200 women are colorblind?
That's quite high. Yeah.
Like, I didn't realize it was so high. And it's essentially that way around because it's carried by the X genome, but it's recessive.
Mm-hmm.
But say if your mum is colorblind and you're a boy, you're definitely going to be colorblind.
100%.
Yeah. And if both of your parents are colorblind, no matter your gender, you will be colorblind. Because for a woman to be colorblind, she needs to have both of her X chromosomes as the colorblind. I want to say mistake, but not mistake.
Abnormally.
There we go. No one's a mistake. Yeah. And then, so some people, so you know how I don't know, I feel like at school we learned that dogs and cats see in black and white, but actually they don't really, because they still have two kinds of cone cells in their eyes, so they can still see a kind of, not grayscale, but let's say a kind of greeny world.
Okay.
Apparently, so people have been looking more and more into how this varies between different people. And actually in the eyes, the numbers of each cone you have varies a lot between people too. So normally you have majority of M and L. So I think mostly L, so the red-green sensitive ones. Then like 50%, 60% of those.
Mm-hmm.
Then like another 40% or 45% of the green ones. And then only like 2 to 5% of the blue ones. So we're not that sensitive to blue light.
Why do you think that is?
Well, so the peak wavelength of the sun, so the color that the sun gives out most strongly is green. So I think we evolved to be most sensitive, or our eyes evolved to be most sensitive to that color.
Sure.
Because it's what illuminates the world. Yeah, and I guess if there was no advantage to seeing better in the blue, then we just don't evolve to have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and apparently there's differences between gender too. So women are actually better at seeing difference in color shades, so we can detect finer differences in colors than men. But men are better at seeing detail afar and detecting movement from far away. And I think this probably comes down to that sort of hunter-gatherer thing. So men are good at hunting and protecting, and their eyes reflect that. Whereas women are good at telling which berries are going to kill you, because maybe they're a slightly different shade of purple or something.
How can we know that for sure, though?
Yeah, I mean, it's stipulation, but it kind of makes sense. I mean, maybe there's a better reason.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a more badass reason.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and I also found out some interesting things. So typically, because of our cones, the colors that we can see are normally within this wavelength range of 400 to 700 nanometers. That's what we define as the visible spectrum,
Maybe.
like from red through to violet. But actually, if it's bright enough, you can see up to, in the ultraviolet, up to about 360 nanometers, and also in the infrared, down to 900 nanometers, if it's bright enough. And I saw this one study where they had infrared pulses coming from a laser, and if the pulses were sort of close enough together, people could then see the light, even though it's a wavelength that we're not really sensitive to at all. But there must be some sort of kind of double photon process that lets you see it happening in the eye or something. They're not really sure, but kind of interesting.
Very.
The last thing about the eye, so you know this like blue light thing, like everyone's like, oh, don't look at blue light before you go to bed, like don't look at your phone, don't look at a screen before you go to bed, it'll wake you up. Well, this is actually, it's not through any of these cones or rods, it's through another protein called melanopsin. It's another kind of one of these proteins. And this photoreceptor, basically determines your circadian rhythm. So telling you when to wake up, when to go to bed. And that's just sensitive to like 480 nanometers. So, again, blue heading towards green. It's also in your eye, but it's not how you see.
What do you mean?
I mean, like these cells are in your eye, but you're not using them to make an image of what you see.
Okay. They're just kicking about.
Just kicking about, being like, wake up. Wake up or don't wake up. So have you ever wondered, like, why are our eyes kind of sunken into our faces?
Sure, because you don't see that on a lot of other animals, do you? I mean, you've got birds. You do see it on a lot of mammals, but not a lot of other. Like looking at dogs, you wouldn't really call them. Yeah,
so primates, you see it, but not, dogs and cats, they're not really. The reason that they're sunken is so that we can see our own facial expressions. So when we smile, we can see that, you know, the sort of skin around our eyes and our cheeks. We can actually see that. So we know what our face is doing.
I'm doing that right now.
Right? You can just see it in the corner of your eye. And it's kind of cool, just because we kind of need to be aware of what our face is doing, because it's one of the major ways that we communicate.
Definitely. Our face is our biggest communicator. Yeah.
And then another question that I had about eyes, maybe the last one, was, why don't we have eyes in the back of our head?
Well, it just wouldn't be practical. I mean, define the back.
I mean, like, so that I could see behind me as well.
Oh, okay. Are you going to answer that?
Yeah, the answer is just kind of like the eyes are really expensive biologically. So, like I said, they're the most complex sensory organ we've got. And they take a lot of energy to build and keep working.
And build.
And if we had another pair of them, then it would be really expensive. And it's just not worth it. It doesn't give enough advantage to be worth it biologically. So, That's why we don't have eyes in the back of our head.
Go figure. I mean, we can always turn around, can't we?
Exactly. It's much quicker than growing another pair of eyes.
Less evolution as a surprise for us.
To be continued in part 2 of Why the Face. If you enjoyed this listening to this episode, and this is just for you, Tara, then go give Fry a kiss from me. And, this is where we're going to put all the rest of the plugs for stuff. And then the intro music comes in, and everybody has a great day. So we all know face, we've all got a face. Actually, is that exclusive? Do some people not have a face?
Should we say most people have a face? I don't think we should say I think we should just stay away from that then.
Most people have a face.
Faces, we've all seen them. Unless you don't have one. I've experienced 3 faces in my life. Studies now confirm that it's the norm to have a face. Who's eyeballed? What the face?